All right, ready to take a deep dive into Chapter 16 of Underground to Canada.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. I know, a teacher reached out saying her students are really, trying to get a deeper understanding of this chapter.
Oh, wow.
And we're here to help. It's a pretty intense part of Julie and Liza's journey.
Yeah.
They've just made it to Levi Coffin's house in Cincinnati. A very, very important stop on the Underground Railroad.
Oh, absolutely. Crucial stop. But of course, danger is never too far behind them.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It feels like the minute they arrive, even before they get to Coffin's house, Barbara Smucker just plunges us into this world of fear and secrecy.
Yeah, you're right. Smuggled in on this cart with the hidden compartment. Talk about setting the stage for a really suspenseful chapter.
Right. And then we meet Levi Coffin himself, this towering figure with these piercing blue eyes, he sees right through Julie and Liza.
Mm-hmm. I think that description is really important. I mean, Coffin isn't just physically imposing, right? He represents, this moral force, direct challenge to the entire system of slavery.
Oh, absolutely. And the way Smucker uses language emphasizes this even more. When he refers to the girls as valuable passengers, or later on as packages from Mississippi.
Yes, it's like he's deliberately using that, language of commerce to undermine the whole concept of human beings as property.
Exactly. It's this subtle wordplay that reveals Coffin's belief in the, inherent dignity of all people, no matter their color. Rejection of the dehumanizing language used to, justify slavery.
Absolutely.
So now they are inside Coffin's house, surrounded by all these other escaped slaves.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no sigh of relief, no celebration.
Right.
Everyone's kind of holding their breath.
You can just feel this tension. Smucker describes them having these frightened faces with the look of rabbits caught in traps.
Wow, yeah.
Which is so powerful because it just shows how deep the psychological trauma they've endured really is. Imagine living every single day with that threat, Knowing one wrong move could send you right back to a life of unimaginable cruelty.
Yeah, it's no wonder they're terrified, even in a place that's supposed to be safe.
Yeah.
And then there's that small detail about clearing the dining room table after every meal.
Yes.
Just in case slave catchers show up.
Oh, yeah. Such an important detail. Speaks to the constant, paranoia that just permeated the lives of everyone involved in the Underground Railroad. Every little thing, every mundane act could have life or death consequences.
Absolutely. Freedom for them was this really precarious state, always threatened by that possibility of being captured.
Always.
And then, boom, just as you think, things can't get more tense, a slave catcher shows up at the door.
Mm-hmm.
And Julie says his voice sounds just like the sheriff back on the plantation.
It's terrifying. Talk about a heart-stopping moment, right?
Right.
Smucker masterfully, I think, ratchets up tension here, bringing in those familiar sounds of the plantation, connecting the girls' present danger with their traumatic past.
Wow.
It reminds us that the threat of slavery lingers even in this supposed sanctuary.
Everywhere. And then we have Aunt Katie. She's got to think fast, hiding the girls between the mattresses, and she makes the bed. Nothing is wrong.
I mean, it's an everyday thing.
Right.
I think Aunt Katie embodies the, quiet heroism of so many women who risked everything to operate the Underground Railroad.
Totally.
She doesn't panic, right? Doesn't freeze. She acts strategically, decisively to protect these girls.
Yeah. She's amazing.
It just showcases, that unsung courage that fueled this entire movement.
For sure. But then you get to the part where Levi Coffin directly confronts the slave catcher.
Yeah.
And even as this guy is, hurling insults and accusations at him, Coffin remains calm, defiant.
This scene is more than just a personal clash, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a symbolic clash of these two completely different ideologies.
Right.
The slave catcher representing that brutal system of slavery, reliant on force and intimidation.
Mm-hmm.
But Coffin represents this, moral resistance, grounding his defiance in his faith and his unwavering belief in human equality.
And he even uses the Bible, to throw the slave catcher's arguments right back at him. Mm-hmm. He says his faith compels him to help those in need, regardless of their color.
Absolutely. And his actions are even more striking considering his position as a president, quote unquote, of the Underground Railroad.
You're right.
His home was a major hub for escaping slaves. So his defiance is a powerful statement. He's putting himself and everything he's built at risk.
Totally. And yet, even as Coffin is, holding his ground, you can feel the tension as that slave catcher is going through the house, searching every room. It's like a cat and mouse game with the highest stakes ever.
Every second must feel like an eternity.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And Smucker uses those sensory details, to pull you right into that moment. The creaking of the rocking chair as Aunt Katie distracts the slave catcher, the muffled whispers of the girls hiding.
You can feel the fear hanging in the air.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're right there with them. And then when the slave catcher finally leaves, it's almost a relief, but it's probably temporary.
Exactly. The threat hasn't gone away. It's just been postponed.
And Coffin knows this. That's why he quickly comes up with a plan to get the escapees onto that noon freight train to Canada. Time is of the essence at this point.
Every minute counts.
Every minute. And then we get that beautiful image of the new clothes, especially those blue sweaters Julie and Liza get. Like they're shedding the remnants of their old lives and stepping into a new future.
I love that contrast between, those beautiful blue sweaters and the ragged clothes they arrived in. So symbolic. It speaks to the transformative power of hope, the possibility of a fresh start, what freedom can truly represent.
For sure. Julissa even says that the blue of the sweaters reminds her of the wisteria back at Massa Riley's summer house.
Oh, wow.
That place where she had, experienced beauty and a sense of peace before everything changed.
That's such a great detail. It connects her present experience of hope with a positive memory from her past, suggesting that even in the midst of unimaginable hardship, the human spirit can hold on to those glimpses of beauty and peace.
Yeah, it's incredible. And then there's Liza, practically skipping for joy. In such fine feathers, Lester and Adam will think we is Queen Victoria herself when we step on the land of Canada.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, talk about a transformation. She's a completely different person from that scared, withdrawn girl we met at the start of their journey.
It's incredible. It really speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. Despite everything Liza's been through, she hasn't lost her capacity for hope and joy. It's like a testament to the power of the human spirit to find those moments of light, even in the darkest of circumstances.
This chapter is just so emotionally powerful, packed with suspense, courage, and those glimmers of hope. What do you think are some of the key things the students should really focus on as they dig into this chapter?
Well, first, I think, they got to grasp that visceral sense of what life was really like on the Underground Railroad. The constant danger, relying on the kindness of complete strangers, the sheer courage it took to escape slavery.
Right.
Smucker brings all of those themes to life with such vivid detail.
And it's not some romanticized version of history, right?
Sure.
It's raw and real.
Exactly. It's history experienced through the eyes of two young girls who are literally fighting for their lives.
And I think it's also crucial for students to really understand those moral arguments that are happening.
Yeah.
Levi Coffin's defiance of that slave catcher is not just personal.
Right.
He's challenging the entire system of slavery, the justifications used to uphold it.
Yeah. He highlights that hypocrisy of using the Bible to defend enslavement, forcing readers to confront those really difficult moral complexities of this period in American history.
Definitely. And we can't forget the symbolism of the clothing either, especially those blue sweaters. It's not just about physical freedom, right?
Yeah.
It's about a mental shift, shedding their old identities as slaves and embracing this new future.
Right. It signifies a rebirth, reclaiming their humanity, a bold step towards self-determination.
There's so much for students to unpack here. The themes of resistance, the power of faith and compassion, the incredible resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity.
Oh, for sure. And it's a fantastic starting point for broader conversations about, the legacy of slavery and the continued fight for equality and justice.
Totally agree. This chapter ends with Julie, Calais, and Liza, right on the edge of this new chapter in their journey. They're heading to Canada, but we all know that road to freedom is rarely straightforward.
Never is. The physical journey to freedom is full of danger and uncertainty, but it's often that inner journey, the journey of healing and self-discovery, that's the most challenging.
Now, that is a powerful thought to consider. We'll unpack that more in just a bit.
Yeah.
We were talking about, Julie, Calais, and Liza's amazing resilience.
Yeah.
But they're not alone in that house, right? The other escaped slaves at the Coffin House.
Right.
Even though they're closer to freedom, they're still just gripped by fear. And their silence, it's really powerful.
It really is. It's heartbreaking. Smucker doesn't give them names or backstories, but she creates this collective portrait of trauma. She describes them as being like rabbits caught in a trap, barely speaking. It's like their silence comes from this deep distrust, from being hunted and dehumanized.
Yeah.
And I think that silence is so powerful because it reminds us that freedom isn't just about reaching a physical destination,
Right.
It's about overcoming those psychological scars of oppression.
It makes you wonder, what are their stories? What horrors have they endured? It's easy to focus on the big names of the Underground Railroad, but what about all those countless others?
Exactly. And that's something important for your students to think about. The Underground Railroad, it wasn't just a system, it was this collective effort. Fueled by bravery and compassion, whispers in the dark. There were so many individuals from all walks of life. Abolitionists, Quakers, free black people, even former slave owners who had a change of heart, all risking their lives to help others escape.
Yeah. And speaking of brave individuals, we can't forget about women like Aunt Katie. I mean, hiding Julie and Liza between the mattresses while a slave catcher is in the house.
Yeah.
That takes serious guts.
Oh, absolutely. Aunt Katie is like this perfect example of the quiet heroism that often goes unnoticed in history. She just embodies the strength and quick thinking of so many women who were conductors on the Underground Railroad.
For sure.
Instead of panicking, she stays calm, offers the slave catcher coffee, engages him in conversation,
Right.
while two young girls are hidden just feet away. Talk about grace under pressure.
She's like a secret agent, right?
Exactly.
Working right under the enemy's nose. Every move she makes is crucial to those girls' survival. And it's a good reminder that women were at the heart of this whole movement, providing shelter, food, care to escaping slaves, often putting themselves in danger to do it.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that they rarely got any recognition for their bravery. I think Smucker's portrayal of Aunt Katie is really a tribute to those unsung heroes, the people who work so hard behind the scenes to make freedom possible.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that moment when Julie and Liza get their new clothes,
Yeah.
especially those beautiful blue sweaters.
Yes.
It's like this breath of fresh air after all that tension and fear.
The symbolism of the clothing is just so powerful. Those blue sweaters, they aren't just about staying warm. They represent shedding those old identities as slaves, stepping into a new life full of hope and possibilities.
And Giuliani even mentions that the blue reminds her of the wisteria back at Massa Riley's summer house,
Oh, wow.
a time before her escape when she experienced beauty and peace, however brief it was.
That's such a brilliant detail by Smucker. It reminds us that even in the midst of unimaginable hardship, the human spirit can hold on to those memories of beauty, find comfort in them. It's like even after all the horrors she's experienced, Julie hasn't lost her ability to appreciate the world around her.
And Liza's reaction is just the best. In such fine feathers, Lester and Adam will think we is Queen Victoria herself when we step on the land of Canada.
I love it.
She's practically dancing with excitement, a far cry from that scared, withdrawn girl we first met.
I know, right? It's just a testament to the power of hope. Despite everything Liza's been through, she still believes in a brighter future, the future where she can be free and reclaim her dignity. Her joy is infectious, and it reminds us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can rise above.
So this chapter is packed with action and suspense, but also those glimmers of hope. If we zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture, what do you think Smucker is trying to tell us through Julie and Liza's experience?
Well, on one level, I think this chapter is like a microcosm of the whole Underground Railroad experience. It captures that constant fear, relying on the kindness of strangers, the incredible courage it took to escape.
Right. And it also reminds us that freedom isn't a destination, it's a journey.
Yes.
And that journey, as we've seen, can be full of physical and psychological challenges.
Absolutely. Smucker doesn't shy away from showing the harsh realities of slavery,
Yeah.
and its lasting impact. The silence of the other escapees, the fear of being recaptured, the constant need for secrecy. Those are all reminders that freedom, once you've got it, it's precious and fragile.
But even with all that hardship, we also see those incredible moments of resilience, compassion, and hope
Oh, yeah.
in Levi Coffin's defiance. And Katie thinking on her feet, and Julie and Liza's belief in a brighter future.
It's powerful, and that's the message that really shines through in this chapter. Even when facing unimaginable adversity, the human spirit can find a way to carry on. It's a message that connects with people of all ages.
So we've covered so much, but there's still more to discover.
Right.
Jolie and Liza are about to start the next leg of their journey to Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and the stakes are higher than ever. What are some things our listeners should keep in mind as they continue reading?
Well, it's important to remember that even though they've escaped the slave catcher, their path to freedom isn't guaranteed.
Right.
There's so much uncertainty ahead, and many more challenges to face.
And even when they reach Canada, their journey isn't really over, right? The scars of slavery can stay with you for years, even after you're physically free.
Exactly. And that's a crucial point. Freedom isn't just about breaking free from physical chains. It's about healing those inner wounds, reclaiming your sense of self-worth, your dignity. It's about building a new identity, a new life.
What you're saying reminds me of that line from Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. It's like it speaks to that legacy of resistance, that unwavering belief in a better tomorrow.
Oh, that's a beautiful connection. It really captures the spirit of this chapter. Jewel, Nellie, and Liza, they embody that dream, that hope. They're the living embodiment of the human spirit's ability to rise above and strive for a just and equitable world.
It reminds us that the fight for freedom is never really over. It continues today in different ways,
Absolutely.
and it demands courage,
Yeah.
compassion, and that unwavering belief in the dignity of all human beings.
Well said. And as your students keep reading, I encourage them to think about how the themes in this chapter connect with what's happening today.
Yes.
How can we, as individuals and as a society, keep working towards a world where everyone can live free from oppression and fear?
Such an important and relevant question. It reminds us that the lessons of the past can guide us today, help us create a more just and equitable future.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of books like Underground to Canada. They don't just take us to another time and place, They invite us to engage with these timeless themes that still shape our world.
So before we move on, I want to ask our listeners a question.
Yeah.
What do you think true freedom means to Julie, Holly, and Liza? Is it just the absence of slavery, or is it something bigger?
That's a great question. And I think each reader will have their own answer based on their own experiences. But it's a question worth thinking about as we continue to explore, the complexities of freedom and the legacy of the Underground Railroad.
We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into Chapter 16 of Underground to Canada.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, fear, resilience, the bravery of everyday people. But ultimately, this chapter ends with Julie and Liza taking this huge leap of faith. They're heading to Canada, a place they've only dreamed of.
Right.
And while it symbolizes so much hope, there are still so many unknowns for them.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this ending so powerful. We're left with that same mix of anticipation and uncertainty, just like Julie and Liza. They're physically free from that plantation, but the question of what true freedom means for them, it's still unanswered.
Exactly. It's like Smucker is making us think about what lies beyond that immediate goal of escaping slavery. Reaching Canada is one thing, but then building a whole new life in a new place, carrying all the weight of their past, that's a whole other challenge.
It is. And I think it goes back to something we talked about before, freedom isn't just a place you arrive at. It's this ongoing journey.
Yeah.
And for Julie and Liza, that journey is just beginning. They've taken those first crucial steps, but there's still a long road ahead.
And it's not just a road with, external obstacles. It's also about that internal journey,
Absolutely.
Right? Healing
Yeah.
and coming to terms with all the trauma they've experienced.
Yeah.
How do they reconcile the horrors of their past with the promise of a new future?
That's a big question. And it's not one that Smucker tries to answer directly,
Right.
Instead, she leaves it open for us to consider, inviting us to think about the lasting impact of slavery on a person's mind and spirit.
Like she's saying, freedom is essential, but it's not this magic cure. It doesn't just erase all the pain or guarantee a life without hardship.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really important message for young readers to understand. Freedom is a process. It's not a finish line.
Right.
It takes continuous effort, individually and collectively, to break down those systems of oppression and create a society that's truly just and fair for everyone.
So this chapter, while focused on Julie and Liza's personal journey, also makes us think about the broader historical context, right?
Yes.
The Underground Railroad was this testament to human courage and compassion.
It was.
But it was also a response to a system that was deeply flawed and unjust.
It was. And it's a system whose legacy continues to affect us today. We can't really understand where we are now without grappling with the past and acknowledging that, the fight for equality and justice is still going on.
Absolutely. I think this chapter, with all its suspense and hope and those lingering questions, it's really a powerful starting point for discussion. Your students are going to have a lot to think about and talk about after reading this.
Oh, for sure. It's the kind of chapter that sparks all these different interpretations and challenges readers to think critically about these complex themes. It's a story that stays with you.
As we wrap up our deep dive today, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this exploration of Chapter 16?
I hope they come away with, a deeper understanding of how complicated freedom really is and the enduring legacy of the Underground Railroad. I hope they recognize the courage and resilience of the people who fought for their freedom and how the struggle for equality continues to this day.
And I hope they're inspired to keep exploring these themes, not just in the book, but in their own lives and in the world around them.
Beautifully said. Understanding the past is key to building a better future.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Underground to Canada. We hope it sparked some new insights and a passion for, exploring these powerful stories that illuminate the human experience.
It was my pleasure. And remember, the journey of discovery, it never really ends.
That's right.
Keep asking questions, keep trying to understand, and keep sharing those stories that really matter.
Until next time, keep those pages turning.